Hello, welcome everyone. We'll start very, very soon, but I thought in this next minute or two before we officially launch, I would love to invite everyone who feels comfortable, who has the bandwidth, to turn on your webcam so we can kind of see each other. And these times where it's so rare that we get a chance to connect, that might help in some of the connections. So please, I encourage you to turn on your webcam, and in the text box, if on the chat box, if you don't mind sharing where are you taking this webinar from. So if you just type in, so I'm going to start off, I'll put in the chat box where I am, which is, let's see, I'm going to make sure that it gets to everyone, that it's not a private message. So I'm in Florida, and that's in the USA. So please share where you are joining from. It's a very international group. It feels like just looking around. Ariana from San Jose, Costa Rica. Excellent. North Carolina, Canada, Trinidad, Port of Spain, Myanmar. Wow, Ireland. Amazing. Mariela from Bolivia, welcome. Pradeep from Nepal. I'm originally from India, so just neighboring country. Pradeep. Tep from Vietnam, Bashir from Bangladesh, welcome. So yeah, different times. I know from calling my my folks in India that it is late now in Bangladesh, and Nepal. So thank you all for joining. So let me I'm going to just stop sharing my screen for a second so I can see everyone. So there's 29 of us right now, and a big welcome to this webinar on organizational happiness. And I'll be co-facilitating here with Lars. Lars, are you on? I see you holding your book. If you want to put on your webcam too, that would be awesome. So what I'm going to tell you before sharing screen is that really the objective here is twofold. One is Lars and I are going to be co-facilitating this live online workshop starting in a couple of weeks. So we want to definitely give you a little background about why you might consider joining us for this workshop. It's a 4-week workshop. And in the process, we also want to make sure that we share with you some information around organizational happiness that would be useful to you, whether or not you're able to join us for the 1-month workshop. So we've got a full 45 minutes ahead, and we'll stay on after that to answer any questions that you have. So big welcome, everybody. I'm going to share screen and just get us started. So once again, thank you very much for taking time to join us, and please feel free to turn on your webcam so we can see each other. And so so starting off, just a question here. Why are you joining this webinar today? So 1, you're just curious about the topic of organizational happiness. 2, do you want to take some ideas back to your team? 3, you're ready to implement and just want to know how. Or 4, you want to know about the organizational happiness walking the talk workshop that starts in a couple of weeks, or is there some other reason? So I'm going to try this. I'm going to try and run a poll so we can see the different reasons. So I'm just going to launch a poll. You should see a poll on your screen now. Do you see the poll, the questions? Does everyone see it?
Yeah, I see it.
Okay, perfect. So take a minute to vote or to choose. Why are you here today? It's always, people always come for different reasons, and we want to make sure that we get a sense of why you're here. And then I'll share the results with you. So, ooh. For some reason, I'm not seeing your votes come through. So you are voting. I'll give you a few more seconds, and then I'm going to end poll and see if the results. The polling feature is one area we've had some, let's see. So share results. Are you seeing the results of the poll? Okay. Okay, great. So, so as you see, there's different reasons all of you are coming into this webinar. And Now I'm going to just share with you a little bit about the institution. Some of you are more familiar with the University for Peace than others, but this is our lofty mission statement. The University for Peace was established by the United Nations back in 1980. And we are in Costa Rica, a country without an army, a country really committed to principles of sustainable development. And in these times, we've been running all of our courses live online. And so it's really an opportunity for us to reach people in different parts of the world with our content and our mission without you having to actually travel anywhere. So this is our mission. And really, to a certain extent, I don't know if you know, but the UN a few years ago, I think it was 2012, where they actually have a day in March, which is the UN International Day of Happiness, because part of well-being, part of cooperation, it connects with the Sustainable Development Goals also, is the importance of happiness. And of course, organizations are a place where we spend a lot of our waking hours. So that's a little bit about why the University for Peace is hosting this. And within the University for Peace that offers master's programs, the Center for Executive Education that is delivering this workshop and this webinar is really focused on different flexible formats for offering our content. Some of you know that we offer diploma programs, and so we're just committed to extending the reach of the university through our transformational programs. So that's a little bit about us. And I want to now turn it over to Lars. As I mentioned, I'll be co-facilitating this with him. Lars and I met nearly a decade ago. Lars, over to you.
Thank you, Mohit. Is the sound okay from here?
Perfect.
All the way from Copenhagen in Denmark. So it's a little getting darker here. It's 7:30 in Copenhagen, but very nice to see all of you. Yeah, so Mohit and I started working together almost a decade ago, like Mohit said, and really focusing a lot around leadership, organizational happiness, real employee engagement. And I think for Mohit and I, we are a very good team. We complement each other very well in the sense that Mohit, coming from a background of being the educator, being at that institution, and me being taking the role, I would say, as a practitioner and working with organizations on organizational happiness and real employee engagement. And also, sometimes they I wanted to say that sometimes they call us the twins, and if you've seen that movie, maybe you will, you know why.
You'd have to see us in person to really get it, but Lars is about 2.5 times my size, and I'm medium sized. So yeah, really looking forward to collaborating with Lars on this. So before we get any further, I wanted to share with you just a few of the benefits of thinking about this 1-month workshop with us. The content is cutting edge, especially when we think about the times we're going through, the ability to really understand how to engage people who you work with. And we talk more than just engagement. We talk about the full understanding of happiness, of flourishing. So cutting edge content. It'll be, just as you're seeing on this webinar, it's an international group of people who are very interested in implementing this, that will be your peers for this process. And we use Zoom as our platform, breakout rooms, polls, shared whiteboard. So really try to recreate that in-person engaging experience. And then the main thing here is, Lars and I love the question, so what? I mean, a lot of this is interesting. What are you going to do with it? So you emerge from this 1-month workshop with a plan that you can implement in your organization. And we'll tell you in this webinar a little bit more also about measuring. And there's a tool called Motivational Landscape, which you'd have a 1-month access for as part of this course. And then there's also a coaching session, because as you go from theory to practice, it really helps to have a little bit of hand-holding, thinking about how do you implement your plan in your organization. So there's a coaching call included. And of course, as part of a offering from the University for Peace's Center for Executive Education. There's a certificate from the UN established university. So these are some of the things I just wanted to put up front. And now we're going to get into the structure of this course called Organizational Happiness, Walking the Talk. And here is where, for each of the modules of the course, we're going to share with you something that you can walk away from today and already have a sense of both content and something that you can perhaps move forward with. So that's our goal today, to give you kind of an appetizer and enough so that you feel like you have a handle on this topic. And of course, we would love to see you back for the longer version. So should I kick off, Lars, with the science of happiness? I've been immersed in this area for about a decade. So if you don't mind, maybe I can start off and then you take over the business case.
Sure, let's do that. Yeah.
Okay, sounds good. So, when we talk about happiness, a lot of organizations have also realized that, yes, happy employees, happy colleagues is important. And they've done things like ping pong tables at work, or free lunch, or celebrating birthdays, and all those things are fun, right? It's nice to be recognized and have a little celebration. But the approach that we're coming from in thinking about organizational happiness is really understanding the social science behind happiness, and it's a science called positive psychology. And so some of you may be familiar with this if you've taken other courses with us, or if you've done some research in positive psychology, but a framework that is a guiding framework for us comes from Dr. Martin Seligman, often called the father of positive psychology. And he says, really his research has spanned different cultures. And he says, there are 5 pillars when we think about human happiness, and he prefers the word flourishing. And each of these pillars is actually independent from the others. And so the first pillar he calls positive emotions. These are things like gratitude, joy, curiosity, right? This is why the ping pong table is fun, because it produces smiles. But this is just one of the 5 pillars of what he would call flourishing. The next pillar is engagement. And engagement is knowing your strengths and using them. The third pillar is the ability to really develop positive relationships. We all know this, that positive relationships contribute to our well-being, but we tend to underinvest in it. And then the M stands for meaning. It's the idea that our life has purpose beyond just ourselves, and how can work contribute to our sense of meaning. And then achievement, the A of PERMA, is the idea that we all want a sense of growth, of learning, of evolution. So these are the 5 pillars that really constitute our understanding of what is happiness. And this is how we approach the science of happiness, and what does this look like in an organizational context, right? That's the challenge we took on. Last thing I want to say maybe here is the fact that this applies to individuals. The idea of well-being, it applies to individuals, it applies to nations. Instead of measuring gross domestic product, we have countries like Bhutan that are measuring gross national happiness. And then it certainly affects organizations too, which are just made up of individuals. Our focus in this particular course on organizational happiness is going to be on organizations. We have a separate course called Designing Your Life that focuses on individuals. So this is just a cover picture of a Harvard Business Review from 2012, when there was research published about the value of happiness in organizations, but very little has been done. And I think things are changing now. So I feel like a lot of our approach is still cutting edge, very timely, and there's really a demand for it, which is why we're offering it. So a little bit about the science of happiness. If you remember one thing from that, PERMA, how do you integrate PERMA into organizations? So over to you, Lars. Well, should we get a little, I'd love to hear what actually participants have to say also. So when you hear organizational happiness, what are a few words that come to mind for you? And I'm going to stop sharing screen here so you can just see each other. There's a text box. When you hear the words organizational happiness, what 1, 2, or 3 words come to mind? So quick, go to your text box, type in, what do you think of? What do you think of? Collaboration, empathy, active listening. Thank you, Yasmina. Good to see you here. Engagement, healthy, harmony with work. Empathy, justice, sense of belonging, good energy, empathy, environment, meaning in work, engagement, compassion, collaboration, well-being, healthy competition, wellness, respect, integrity, trust in capitals, healthy workplace, productivity. Interesting, Victor. We'll come back to that a little bit. Unity, empowerment, Joe. Helpful, recognition. Excellent. So you're seeing that we all have a sense of some words and adjectives that come to mind. So let me share screen again. Thank you everyone for jumping in and sharing with us. And now over to you, Lars, for a little bit about the business case for happiness.
Sure. And before I go into that, I just want to say, like Mohit said, that we talk about happiness in space of our life, one from nations, one on society. We talk very much from an individual point of view, but also this from organizational point of view. And I think we actually spend, the average person spends 90,000 hours at work in a lifetime. And I think both as managers, but also as HR professionals, organization professionals, we have to also focus on happiness at work or organizational happiness. And thank you for sharing all these just before, all these words in the chat box. And it really speaks to what we're doing, Mohit and I. All of these are subjects that we will dive into, I think, more or less. But one of them is, I think, one of the challenges that we see, mentioned that since 2012, where Harvard Business Review had that cover issue talking about the happiness dividend. It's been mostly talk, and I think that's a challenge that we have. We talk a lot about happiness, but getting from what we in this course call walking the talk, or what I would also sometimes call getting from strategy to action, it's really the most important thing and also a difficult thing, but it's really to get a handle on how do you actually do this as a leader in an organization. And one of the important things is to talk in business case terms. I think if you're able to build the business case, I think there is a lot of things, and maybe we can have go 3 slides, maybe one more, Mohit. Yeah, this one. Oh, sorry. No, the other one before that. So there's a lot of things that actually, if you look at it, this slide that we sometimes present in this way, this has a lot to do with unlocking the potential. We will come back to that, but this has a lot to do with productivity. One of you mentioned that there is a lot of cases, a lot of research that productivity goes up, customer service goes up, happier customers. Also, what we talk about is if you are able to do this, or if you are successfully working with organizational happiness, the result will be happier. Of course, is also a very good business case for your organization. Some of the numbers, and we have a lot more cases and numbers that we can present you with, but it's about unlocking potential, and it's reducing the disengagement in the organization. Just 2 different errors going, one's going up and one is going down. And if you look at this, of course, it could be difficult to say 300% more innovation, and that's a difficult one to measure, but all the others, and I think we have like maybe 10 more KPIs on this business case. How do you measure that, and what are the actual results from different kind of industries and different kind of organization? But if you just look at these numbers, this would be a really, really nice business case for any organization. And this is sometimes the conversation you need to have with your CFO or with the board at the board level, to build the business case and start your project on organizational happiness. This is something that we are very passionate about, having a handle on organizational happiness. Mm-hmm.
Raj, do you want me to go to the next slide, or?
Yeah, to the next slide.
Yeah.
So if you look at some of these figures, and of course, I think some of the obvious one is that if you have happier, healthier employees, what would that mean to your productivity, to your customer satisfaction, to your the reduce of burnouts or sick leaves, things like that. And I just wanted to put this question, and maybe we can have it in the chat box and say, if you are able to harvest or look at some of these, tap into some of on this business case, what would that mean for your organization?
And I'm going to put this slide back, this one. Okay. So let's say, even in a conservative situation, you have different hats you wear in your organization, but let's say you're the entrepreneur, you started your team, you own your company, let's say, or you're the team manager. What if in 1 year you just had 66% fewer sick days from your employees? What would that mean in terms of gained productivity? What if you had less turnover? That means you don't have to hire someone new because somebody's left and you've got to train them. Even if you pick one or two of these things, of these metrics, and you know how much your people make, you can start figuring out the numbers. The business case is just, it grows as your team is bigger and bigger. But even on a 5-person team, if you have 10% less sick days and 10% more productivity, it's a substantial number. And the great thing is, Lars and I didn't have to collect this research because other people had done it. 10 years ago, it was harder to make the business case. There were less studies out there.
Yeah, and some of the answers here, if you look at it, tendency to work more and have higher productivity. Yeah, it's a good point, that tendency to work more, love your work more. Of course, that's also some kind of an alarm bell in some organizations if you tend to work more. Better results, of course, it's an obvious one. And that's also what we see, actually, when we start measuring on it. We'll get back to that. But when we start measuring on it, we can follow that business case in organizations. And this is where something that is very complex, as Mohit said, the science of happiness gets very operational into organizations. And I think that's where that's the link that we're trying to make, getting from something that is the science of happiness and making it work in organizations.
Great. So let us know if you have any questions as we proceed. We'll probably take some of the questions at the end. So we want to move a little bit from the business case, right? Which is, again, it depends on the size of your organization. The numbers would probably be slightly different. In the actual course, we look at a business case calculator where you can plug in real numbers based on how much employees make, based on your estimates on these numbers. So you can get an actual savings estimate for your organization. That's the level of depth we get to. But now I want to talk a little bit about the happiness sweet spot. And this is where Lars's expertise really comes in. He's written a bestseller book on this topic. But let me kick things off, Lars. Let me introduce you as the author and the speaker, other than being a CEO. That was your last life. But when Lars and I started collaborating, it was through this positive leadership course. And then really the focus, at least my focus, had been on understanding the science of happiness and PERMA. And Lars's question was, well, what does this look like in the context of, he mentioned KPIs, that means key performance indicators. A lot of organizations have a very narrow set of metrics that determine if you're successful or not. So what he did is he mapped these, you can see the different letters of PERMA, and the happiness sweet spot is where a strengths-based leadership with organizations that really understand their why or purpose, and compassionate leadership, when those all intersect, that's what, at least my understanding, I have to read the book again maybe, is the happiness sweet spot. But what the fascinating work that Lars has done is taken the science of our understanding of positive psychology and really thought about it in organizational terms. So Lars, I'm going to let you talk a little bit more about, the book, which is also part of the course, and anything else around the happiness sweet spot.
Sure, and yeah, of course, the book. So when we published it last year, it was kind of we wanted to give. And by the way, Mohit wrote the foreword, so maybe that's why it's so popular. So, but we wanted to offer a how-to book, not all the academics, not all the being advising, but we wanted to offer a how-to book on organizational happiness. And it was very surprising, actually, when we put it out there. Just after 1 week, it became #1 in Japan. For some reasons, I still don't know, but it was very popular, and then it became #1 in a lot of countries. But I think it has to do with taking something that is, like I said, quite complex, and putting it into a simple framework, which I think is important. If you need to implement something in your organization, it has to be simple, because when you start communicating and start to scale it in your organization, it has to be a very simple framework. So what I've done here, or what we have done, is to create the happiness sweet spot, which is not a one-size-fits-all, but it has 3 pillars. Maybe we can take the next one with him.
Sure.
So it has 3 pillars, which is really the top part: purpose, as you see here, and strength and compassion. And what we are saying here in a business context is that your competitive advantage is really in your purpose. It's how you manage and lead your people, and it's in your culture, your leadership and your culture. It's not, I would say, operational excellence. That's necessary, of course, but it's not sufficient. Your really competitive advantage, where you raise above your competitors or your colleagues, is where you work with your purpose, how you manage and lead your people, and with your leadership culture. So this is what we built. On purpose, it's about how do you, if you don't have a clear purpose, how do you communicate and share a clear purpose that is bigger than profit? It's a heartfelt purpose. How do you communicate and share that with your stakeholders, I would say, including employees? So that is the first one. We work with that. How do you create that brand for your organization, both in terms of employees, but also in terms of your market? For some organizations, this is easy. For some organizations, very difficult. Then we work with strengths-based leadership, which is the second pillar of organizational happiness. Basically, what are your superpowers? What is your superpower? You can reflect on that. You need to know your superpower. You need to know the superpowers of the team you're part of, and the whole organization. What are the superpowers of your organization? How do you put that into play for the purpose of your organization? And the last one is compassion, the third pillar of organizational happiness. When we work with that, it's really about leadership. I don't think you can have compassion without, you can have leadership without compassion, and the other way around. This is about how do you cultivate a culture of leadership and compassionate leadership in your organization. Because relating back to what organizational happiness meant to you, some of you said that in the chat box: empathy, compassion, purpose, trust, things like that. Compassion creates trust, psychological safety, enhances performance. So there's a whole connection between compassionate leadership and and how what culture you cultivate in your organization and how you perform. Actually, compassionate leadership is a very effective leadership style.
So, Lars,
So that's the third pillar.
What I'm thinking, so Lars, now that you've shared the happiness sweet spot with our audience, we have about 48 people here. What I want to suggest is, part of our educational approach to any workshops we do is we share some content, and it's really how does that content, how does that framework fit within your context? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create breakout rooms. There's going to be about 4 of you in each room. And as a group, you're going to get 5 minutes to talk a little bit about what's the opportunity you see for implementing organizational happiness in your organization. Okay, you can talk about this framework, compassion, strengths, and purpose, or you can talk about, what are some of the challenges you face, but it gives you a chance to connect with some other people and just reflect on how might this be something that you can move forward with. Some of you may not have done these breakout rooms before. All you do is when I set up the breakout room, you'll see a message saying join breakout room. Just say yes. You'll find yourself after a few seconds with a few other people. Unmute your mic, show your camera, and have a discussion of 5 minutes around what is the opportunity of implementing organizational happiness in your context. Is that clear? Okay, you get 5 minutes. So here is, I'm just going to put you in 12 breakout rooms. All right, so welcome back. Welcome back. Hopefully you had a good breakout room discussion. And I know sometimes in this initial kind of appetizer webinar, that breakout room goes very fast. Yeah, you're with new people, you're introducing yourself, but we wanted to give you a flavor of how we also run these processes. So we'll take just a couple of minutes to debrief. Something that stood out for you from your discussion, either a comment, maybe there was a challenge, and feel free. There are 2 options. You can type in the text box something that you want to say, or you can unmute yourself and share something that got discussed in your breakout room. Okay, Flora, I'm glad that was fun.
This is Flora in our breakout room. It was too quick. So we kind of use most of our time kind of to process the information because, it's quite innovative. So that's where we spend the bulk of our time, was kind of what did we learn from it? And the bottom line is that it makes more sense and we need more. Great.
Yeah. And frankly, we give instructions before people go into breakout rooms, but whatever happens in the breakout room is usually good. And it's not always what we ask you. So processing is excellent. Glad to hear. Other comments? OH for a new team, new colleagues. Yasmina, I think there's a real opportunity when you come together as a new team, right? Because there is no existing culture. So that's a great moment to kind of implement an organizational happiness plan. The challenge might be if there's an existing team with old norms, old ways of doing something, how do you communicate, hey, we're going to try and do things differently? So new team is a great opportunity. Yeah. I see a good, difficult question. And you know what I do with all the difficult questions? I give it straight to Lars. Lars, I see a question in the text box, which is, what are the KPIs for compassionate leadership? How do you start measuring compassion? What would you try to measure there? Or would there be a change in certain systems, ways of doing something? Lars, to you. Oh, you're on mute, Lars. Did you hear Lars, you're muted. Did you hear the question? Okay.
It's a very good question, and one of the difficult things, I think. But still, we have this platform, and maybe I can introduce it now. We have a survey that we use as to create a baseline when we start measuring on organizational happiness and real employee engagement. So it's 10 questions that are closely linked to organizational happiness, to the 3 pillars. And 3 of the questions are also linked to compassion. And this is where you ask your organization about, do you have a friend at work? Or your opinion counts, or do you feel that your contribution is valued? So we have certain criteria for getting of how does it look on the compassion side in the organization. So you can call it a KPI, it will come up with a score, but that just means that you will have an indication for your organization. What would be a nice conversation to have with your team next time? What would be relevant? Is there something where we're really good at? And is there something where we need to maybe spend more time or maybe talk about more about? Yeah, and we're going to share those 10 questions with you, of course, but all those 10 questions are linked to organization happiness. And that's a way to both create a baseline, but also to measure and monitor and follow up on how you're progressing with your organization.
Thanks, Lars. So yeah, we'll get to that and I'll share screen again. But Lars, I want to pick up one more question that came in from Valeska. She says, in the private sector, it is difficult for leaders to see the financial benefits of an organizational happiness project. Lars, do you think we've reached the point where there is enough data? Maybe they've not seen it, but maybe 5 years ago, they would have had a tough time. And now there is just enough to show, or what are your thoughts?
I think, and now I take the role as the corporate trusted advisor, because that's what I do. And sometimes people are confused about being corporate and talking about happiness and compassion. But I think the last 3 or 4 years, it's much easier to step into the boardroom, so to speak, to step into the organization and talk about these things. Maybe because it makes sense for some organization that they're addressing the sustainability development goals or something, but also when you talk about the business case. And this is where I'm about being the hippie, because that doesn't work in a corporate world. I try to be the corporate trusted advisor, but talking about organization happiness and compassion and why it makes sense in organization. And my feeling is that there has been a shift the last 2 or 3 years where these conversations are easier to have with leaders and CEOs and in boardrooms.
Sounds good. So Lars,
and actually, Mohit, you know, we had a big project with a large American corporation, actually, with many thousand employees, where they are talking about organizational happiness as a part of their culture. And
you know, it's interesting. While they were our client, I was a little sensitive not to necessarily reveal their name, but I've been in touch over the past year with the head of HR, and she's so proud of the work so it's Boston Scientific, and they are publicizing the fact that they've done this organizational happiness initiative. They have, I think, about 6,000 people in Costa Rica across 2 plants, and they put all their people leaders through this process. So yeah, you know, it's a company that is very much you know, driven by a financial bottom line. They run their factories 24/7, and they saw the huge benefit of investing in organizational happiness as a way to again, individually, it made sense. Happy employees is a good thing, and it made sense at an organizational level. So that's a case study that we have, and we'd be happy to tell you more about that. So Lars, why don't you get into, I know we have just a few minutes left, and then we can stay on if people have some additional questions. But motivational landscape, you've done some breakthrough work on taking happiness, which is inherently hard to measure, and really synthesizing it into these 10 questions that can become a pulse survey. People can weekly, monthly respond to these questions, and it creates a tool for leadership to get a grip on this otherwise important but hard to measure concept of employee happiness. So I'm going to just share visually and have you add a couple of things to this tool.
I think we said a lot about the measurements and a lot about, but this is actually sometimes the missing link, because this is where you have a Mohit said, key performance indicator on organizational happiness. And I think normally organizations have, maybe they have a lot of KPIs or key performance indicators they measure on. We have financial performance, customer satisfaction, and then we have employee engagement or organization happiness. But very often we only ask these questions once a year, which means that we're acting on old data. We're not really following up on it. So this is a way to, these 10 questions, it will take an employee like 90 seconds to give feedback. And then every month you have a picture of your motivation. That's kind of metaphor we're using for this. Both where do we have a really, really good leader that we can learn from? And where is there a smoke before it becomes a fire, maybe? And what is the conversations we need to have in the organization? So that's
can I do one thing? I'd love to, we have a group here of 45 people. Let's ask this one question. And, I do have a poll also around it, so we can quickly see, even though I'm not seeing all the results, but let me poll you. And let's see if I can pull up this poll. Yes. The poll is your company investing in measuring organizational happiness? And are you seeing the poll now on your screen? Okay, so please take a second to vote. So this will give us some real-time feedback on how much. 5 is yes, they're really doing it very, very well, compassionate leadership, and they've got data in place. 1, not at all. 3, somewhere in the middle. I'm going to give you 10 more seconds. Vote. And 3, 2, 1, get your results in. Okay, end poll, share results. Somebody tell me, Lars, tell me what results you're seeing. It's not showing it to me. Which score got the highest?
Number 3.
Number 3. Okay, somewhere in the middle. Yeah.
And no, but this is also what we just talked about before you launched the poll, because this is what most organizations do. We do a survey once a year. But actually, when we have the data on that survey, the survey is maybe 2 months away, and it's a snapshot of the organization at that point. So you're acting on old data, like you know how the organization is doing. I would advocate that you do this every month, but with fewer questions. And this is what we can do with motivation landscape. We've seen it a couple of times, that about measuring, monitoring, and follow up on a monthly basis. It's a really strong way of having focus on what matters.
Yeah, and I want to just acknowledge both Mariella and Danielle's comments. Often this is not done because that causal link between happiness and actually bottom line results is not there. So people just focus on the financials or sometimes customer satisfaction, but we miss something that's a win-win-win, right? It's why not invest in your people's happiness when it's good for everything? So yeah, it is something that hopefully is changing. Martin Seligman, who we referred to early on, thinks it should be a human right, the ability to have work that allows people to flourish, right? Not just a paycheck, but allows you to flourish and be happy. And I love that concept. So we're going to wrap up here. I want to let you know what you can do if you're interested in joining us for our 1 month live online workshop starting in 2 weeks. So we'll send you at the end of this the PowerPoint with all the links, but we have a page that summarizes all the timings and the dates, and that's the link, so you can register directly. Of course, many of you might have questions, and so you can email Hannah, who's on the webinar. Thank you, Hannah, for fielding any specific questions that come in. So hbenson@upeace.org. And then you might also have questions very specific around the approach or the methodology or the coaching or the plan. So anything that's content specific, please feel free to reach out to Lars or me. We also have a syllabus. So just an opportunity for you to get to know more about this before you decide if it's a right fit. We will definitely be offering it again at some point because we are almost full at this point. So I think we have space for, depending on the actual limit, but we probably have 3 to 4 spots left for the course starting in 2 weeks. So that's good for us that it's filling up, but we don't want it to be too big. So if this is not great timing for you, I'm sure we'll have a chance to offer it again in 2021. So that's what we wanted to share with you at this point. And we've taken the time. We said that we would request of you. So please, if you need to drop off and move on to other things, thank you very, very much for joining. Bottom line is happy employees lead to happy customers, lead to a successful company and meaningful lives. So hopefully this message is clear. It's a win for individuals, win for organizations, and a win for society. So thank you again. And Lars and I will stay on here to answer, and Hannah too, and Esme also from our team to answer any questions that you might have. So I'm going to stop sharing. Thank you again.
And I also wanted to say, Mohit, because I think we are about 40, 50 people here spending 45 minutes on this subject. So we are all in the same area of interest. So I also wanted to say, just reach out, connect on LinkedIn, start discussions. And if there's something that Mohit and I are very passionate about, and we have some experience, and I'm sure you also have that, or maybe even questions, or just wanted to connect around this. So please feel free to do that also.
Thanks, Lars, for adding that. We'll add our LinkedIn handles when we send out the PowerPoint. So great. So there's any questions? We have maybe 5 minutes. We can stay on things that. Let's see, I'm going to scroll screen so I can see everyone's face. Who's there? Okay. All right, definitely some familiar faces. Feel free to also ask, yes, we're doing questions, but feel free to ask questions in the chat box if easier.
Hi, I have one question.
Sure.
Yeah, so we are right now in COVID-19. So for the employees' happiness, what should organization do during this time in the COVID-19 crisis?
Yeah, so I'll give a very short answer first, and Lars, feel free if you want to elaborate. But the fundamentals of our understanding of positive psychology and happiness hasn't changed. So people need connection. People need to feel that their work matters. People need to be using their strengths. People need to feel like they're achieving results, and people need positive emotions. So that framework, whether it's PERMA or the more simplified framework of purpose, strengths, and compassion, hasn't changed. The only thing is the how is going to look different, right? Because maybe some of it would happen, maybe if your strengths was dealing directly face-to-face with customers, and now you're not meeting customers face-to-face, you and your team is going to have to think about, how do we still put Mohit in a place where he can use his strengths, given that he can't interact face-to-face anymore. So I don't know, Sin, if that helps, but basically the framework hasn't changed. The how needs to be thought through quite differently for a lot of organizations. Great question.
Yeah, and maybe I can add to that, because it's also, I agree with Mohit that it's not. Of course, there is a change here in the world that we are living in, but the frameworks are still the same, and then the needs, the human needs are still the same, also in terms of happiness. But I would also say that the conversations that I'm having right now with leaders are more about wellness, employee wellness, employee happiness. And also it's more about, how do I apply compassion and empathy in my leadership style? Because I think I want to do more of that. Tell me how to do it, basically, and which is not a simple thing, but but I get a lot of these questions or conversations about how to be an effective leader when you are full of empathy and compassion.
All right. Anyone else? That was a good way to launch things. You know, I think to maybe echo Yasmina, your comment, I know that there's a lot that you're processing also, probably from the information to the how you might be able to implement it. So that's fair enough. I see a couple coming in. Great question. Vicky says, great question. How to work on happiness during crisis? When the compassion circles grow, should we increase our purpose? So again, without going too much into details, you know, in Costa Rica, there's an agency called CINDE that works with all the multinationals in Costa Rica. They register with CINDE. And through the University for Peace, we have an initiative where we do these webinars once every few months with CINDE. And what they asked me to do in the last webinar, this was back in, I think in May or so 2 months after the COVID had started, the webinar topic was around leading flourishing virtual teams. That was the one topic that got the most requests. So when people are working virtually, how do you make sure all this? So again, I would just like to say that there is a lot of both thought that has gone into this and practices. You know, one leader shared with me how at the beginning of a Skype meeting, a Zoom meeting, she starts with just something very personal, like bring a photo and, you know, let's say it's a team of 6 and share that photo and why is it meaningful to you, or wear your oldest piece of clothing and explain why. So from something as let's say simple as that technique to create connection, to offering online yoga programs, meditation. So there's a lot of experimentation going on. There's a lot of things we've seen, but certainly it is a need, as Lars referred to. So thank you, Victor. Let's see, self-care programs, yeah. And from Victor, thank you, Lars, everyone. Great. Okay, so maybe on that note, I just want to acknowledge again that it's been a pleasure to see so many people who've taken time out on this very important topic. Lars, I'll let you have the last word here.
Okay, thank you for being almost an hour with us on this subject. It's something that we, as I said, is very passionate about, and I think the circles in this area is getting bigger and bigger. And I think this the turnout here and having 40-50 people joining us here is also shows that. So thank you for being here and listening to the message, but also sharing your comments. Was great. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Please be in touch.
Thank you.